Good morning to all of our members and guests. For the ones who do not know me already, my name is Gianfranco Cecconi. I'm the Chief Solution Officer at the International Data Spaces Association. Some of you were new to IDSA, may have had the opportunity to meet me already in another role as Executive Director of the European Union Data Spaces Support Center. I have the privilege to be your host today. This is the first of 4 appointments like this that the IDSA has opened beyond the boundaries of our members, as they usually are a restricted call. We call these 4 appointments the open month. And why do we need to open our doors to guests? Well, IDSA is a non-for-profit membership association. So we are fully funded by the generosity of our members and by the organizations like the European Union, not only the European Union, that entrust us to contribute to their research and development programs. So to trust us, you need to know us, and you need to know what the association's ambition is and what we stand for. So that is why we open the doors. We need to create that opportunity for you. What the IDSA does is actually very simple. We do one thing and we try to do it very well. So since we started almost 8 years ago, we've been organizing and facilitating our members into developing assets that enable trust and self-determination in data sharing. These assets can be anything from rule books to reference models to the specification of technology protocols so that they can become international standards at some point later. We actually don't write code, we don't sell products or services. That is for someone else to do. And we want data sharing to take place according to a model called data space. It's not something we invented, it's not yet mainstream, but it's documented in literature and explored by many organizations worldwide, whether they call it like that, data space, or in some other name. It is a model built on principles that favor openness, interoperability, through international standards, and decentralization in data sharing between federated peer participants. Friends, please mute yourself. Cool. So why we prefer the data space model? It prevents silos, it prevents monopolies, vendor dependency, all things that hurt trust and the sovereignty of people and organizations over their data. So why does the IDSA do that? Because we believe that both the economy and the societal challenge we face today need more and better data to be shared to enable that innovation, to enable those solutions, to unlock the data economy. That is something we like to say. So that was just a reminder of who we are. There's something that perhaps the ones of you who are very, very new to data spaces may welcome. That is a sort of a recap of what we're talking about here. Of course, we can talk for a very long time, or I can give you the 1-minute version. The 1-minute version is what I can do with the supporting little drawing on screen. Traditional data sharing has always happened the obvious way, in one-to-one bilateral arrangements, little 2 balls talking to each other to the left. Ad hoc, not necessarily using standards, very, very based on the fact that you can trust the other and know them personally. And again, that's fine, it works. It's what you found it traditionally in one link of a supply chain. But does that scale? Of course it doesn't. And it depends so much on the other being an exact mirror of the arrangement you need on your side. That's not ideal. Over the years, and today probably the most mainstream solution is the one you see in the middle. Someone offers themselves as a platform where the exchange can happen. Again, that works, but it also has significant limitations. Usually the guy in the center, the privileged one, gets a bit too powerful. It can create situations of monopoly. They get a lot of advantages by being there. And that's not something that helps data sharing to be trusted and sovereign as we want it to be. What we are trying to get to is the model that you see represented to the right. It's a federated of participants. There's no privileged actor in this game, and you can join and leave as you like, as long as the rules of the data space are respected. Being based on international standards, you don't need to negotiate strange technology protocols to join. You just use the standards that are agreed. That's easy. Well, it will be soon enough, also thanks to our work. So just to recap, open, interoperable, based on international standards, and decentralized. Now, the data space model is not yet fully explored, we may say, but we have a lot of pioneer friends who joined us in this adventure. We count as IDSA 163 members as of today, more than 800 contributors who over the years have written together those rulebooks, those reference models, and those protocols. They got to know us and the other members. They decided that we were worth supporting through the membership fees, donations, and first-hand work, participating to the working groups. Last summer, actually, I decided myself to join the IDSA for about the same reason, as part of the core team in my case. I had been contributing to the development of open data and data sharing for 10 years. It wasn't easy to leave a safe job in a large management consulting and go in no-profit, but I felt the same call we hope you feel to support and accelerate the development of data spaces even further. Our hope is that by the end of the month, by the end of this open month, perhaps by the end of this call, you will know enough about the association and the other members and what we do to understand how important it is that you join us too. I promise I only talk for another minute and I'm done. Calls like this are one of the privileges that you get by being a member. We've been running these series for 5 years. I have a loyal following of more than 50 participants on average every time. And considering that we run this at 9 a.m. Central Europe time on a Monday, it's quite a number. I'm quite happy with that. The call creates space for all IDSA members to gather and present to each other their projects, to discuss, share experiences, best practices, network, and it serves as a channel for everyone to be up to date with the latest news about the association activities, how well the adoption of the assets is working, and so on. I've repeated several times that we are a membership association. We are our members. So more than we are a bunch of colleagues in a small office in Dortmund, where we're based in Germany. But it's also thanks to these calls that we get a pulse of how the association is doing. We learn about the success and struggles of the others. We understand what we need to focus next. Again, the association is you. So we do what you need. We hope you will take full advantage of the open month and decide to stick to us beyond this month, but you need to become a member for that. And that's really my intro. I will be with you for the whole hours. I wanted to show you the agenda for a second before going on to my next colleagues. We will talk today about an overview of all the assets I told you about a second with my colleague Christoph. We will have Microsoft as a guest today to highlight their own experience with data spaces and their contribution to our work groups and activities. We will update you on the upcoming event like you do in normal calls with a focus specifically on trainings. All of this from now in the next 50 minutes or so. There will be also time for Q&A just after our friends from Microsoft and at the end if the timing is right. That's all. Christoph, I believe I can give it to you to take it from here.
Thank you, Gianfranco. And I think you will skip the slides for me, right? So we can keep this screen set up. Perfect. Yes, hello and good morning, everyone, or also good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I would like to give you, before we hand it over to our colleagues from Microsoft, a couple of insights. So as Gianfranco said, maybe here are some newbies to the topic. So let's get right away to some of the basics that we as IDSA provide to you, thanks to the community work our members are doing. Please skip to the next slide. Exactly. So with the motivation that Gianfranco gave, I think we can agree that at the end, we all will need, as you can see on the top, global standards. So interoperability and this data space topic will never fly if it's just something from Germany, from Europe, or something that is focused on a local market. So international and global standards are very important for us. And this is with all our assets, basically what we are striving for to create this vision of interoperability and trust and sovereignty in data ecosystems. To achieve this, we are also aligning with the large initiatives out there that deal with the topic of data sharing to create this jointly. At the bottom now with this funnel view, this is where we present you the assets that IDSA itself, so our members, are caring about, starting with a non-technical view on data spaces, which is the rulebook document where you can find governance perspectives or process descriptions, things like that, and also a legal perspective on the topic of data sharing, before you then could step into this more technically related perspective on data spaces in our reference architecture. And you could say this funnels down. At this point, we are heavily discussing the topic of the data space protocol, since over our journey, and I come to this journey in a second, we now realize that we might have all the protocols that it needs for the payload, so sending data from A to B or also sharing services with you. But for the negotiation that has to take place right before you can get into this sharing aspect, there's actually a gap, and this is what we close with the data spaces protocol. Further down the road in this funnel view, we also talk about certification, one of the early day core assets that we developed, and we are still refining it, because if you think about sharing data in an ecosystem where you do not necessarily know the other participant, having digital identities is of course a good and important first step here, but actually you also want to trust that the technical infrastructure that exists on the other side of the funnel, the line, you can trust these technical components that are used on the other side. All of this, what we develop with our members, is to this point rather theoretical. So at a certain point, when also more and more companies, more and more projects came up with real implementations of what we thought about on paper, we realized we also have to take care about something else than only these core documents and core perspectives. We also need to create landscapes. We need to create reports about what is going on out there in the public, because we are sort of the spider in the web with a lot of contacts to companies, projects, and consortia. So we thought it would be a good idea to, for example, come up with a report about the connector implementations that exist at this point in time, and make everyone out there aware about these things. But of course, I mean, we are techies a lot of times, so we love the tech perspectives with connectors and all these things, but actually where things come to fly is not only in one specific technical component. Where things come to fly is in reference projects. And there are quite a few projects out there, you could say. In the meantime, in our data spaces radar, which you see depicted lightly on the right side, we have more than 150 data space examples and use cases on all different kinds of maturity levels. So you could say starting with rough ideas that are drawn in a bar at night on a sheet of paper, all the way up to those data spaces that are in the making and also operationalized already, is something that we collected in the radar. Could you please skip to the next slide, Gianfranco? So let's resort this a bit, and I promised to talk quickly about the history so you also know where we're coming from, and I teasered this already a bit. So being techies, of course, you can imagine that when we started our journey in 2016, we were heavily focused on these technical aspects. So reference architecture, and also here already with the foreseen certification in very first versions, this is where we wrapped our head around. We thought, okay, if you solve this, if we describe thoroughly how data spaces should be built and how you can certify them, we're good. And this carried us all the way up to 2019, when we started to realize, okay, there's more in data sharing than just a good technical setup. You need to give the answers to your potential participants, how they can be onboarded. You need to answer questions about all these operational things, and also on the legal aspects, which is why we came up with a rulebook then on this point in time. And then just by more and more things hitting the table, more and more solutions, more and more projects, we came up with these ideas of the data spaces radar and also the different reports, such as the connector report, how you can find it. And now 2024, you could say this is the year of the protocol to knit all these aspects together, to give everything a foundation where participants in data spaces can start negotiating about their policies, come to agreements, also disagreements when it comes to this aspect of data sharing. And this is where we are also heavily involved with the standardization bodies that will make this idea reliable international global standards. Next slide, please. So let's resort again a bit. For those of you who are with us, so I saw Matthijs at the very beginning waving, and also some other names look very familiar to me. For those of you who are with us, know that especially in the early days, basically asking a project or a person or a company to step into this world of data spaces meant to send them to rocket science things. So you had to dig into documents that were not easy to understand. You had to do a self-educated process also, and the few experts that were out there back in the times were quite busy, you could say, trying to onboard the wave of people that wanted to know more. Our ambition ever since then always was to make it easier. So actually this rocket science state was not variable for us. We always wanted to have this piece of cake state where people can make use of easy to use solutions. So buying off the rack solutions that enable you to be part of a data space is actually the ideal state. So we don't want to send everyone to study these technical, non-technical documents to go through certification. It's like we need to make it easier. If you click once more, Gianfranco, that's also something that my colleague Antoine later will talk about, so I don't send you to the details, but basically one core element to make this transition easier is also by providing trainings, and I just teaser here the information that Antoine will give you later today. Next slide, please. If you want to dig into some of these core documents, if you want to know more, with the QR code there you can see here on screen, you will find our knowledge base where you find some elements that help you to understand these assets a bit better, that hopefully also make your journey a bit easier. So this is for those of you who want to be self-educated. Please also, of course, always feel free to reach out to us so we can lend a hand in finding your journey through this information. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I think this is the perfect transition also to our next speaker then in a moment. So all of our efforts, these assets that we created with our community, with our members, at the end led to a lot of projects, like I said, 150 plus examples in our data spaces radar in the meantime. But also honestly, stepping one step back, looking at where we are in the general journey, I think we can be very clear on the fact that we're still in this early adopter phase. So that's also important to understand, to do some expectations management here. We're still in the early days of data spaces. We have still quite a journey ahead of us. But there are many projects out there where you can get inspired, where maybe you also already are involved. And I really hope to find you as a close part of our community to make this scaled journey happen here, to bridge the gap between now and the early majority to make data spaces fly. And with this, I hand it back to you, Gianfranco, because I think that for the assets of IDSA was already enough as a first insight.
Thank you. Without, let's say, overloading our new friends with content, they will have plenty of time to get to know us better as they become member. Let's move to the next, and the main dish for today, Eric. I'm talking about you. As I said earlier, the membership, the association is made of its members, and some of our members have been super active and helped us dramatically in achieving what we deliver for you to leverage and reuse in the field. And one of these is Microsoft. Eric, please tell us what IDSA is for you through our work, through your work in data spaces, please.
Okay, thank you, Gianfranco. My name is Eric Samson. I'm with Microsoft. I am with the Microsoft legal team, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm more what we call a technical diplomat, meaning that I do the connection between the lawyers and the technology. Because at a given time, you have regulators talking about the cloud, about data sharing, about a lot of technical concepts. And at a given time, you need to introduce some real technology expertise. Otherwise, it's going to go wild, I would say. So within the Microsoft legal department, we have this PSRR team. That's the team dealing with digital privacy, digital safety, regulation, and standardization. And within that team, I'm part of the CSG, that's the corporate standard group within Microsoft. So that's the team where we represent Microsoft in the various international standardization bodies like the ISO, Sensenelec, W3C, OASIS, and many more. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to talk about the Microsoft vision for data spaces, then deep dive into the Microsoft participation contribution to the IDSA activities, then a slide about our joint standardization efforts. Then I will talk a little bit about what we do in terms of open source with IDSA and the other members. And at the end, I have a message for all of you willing to join the data space journey. So what you can do based on what kind of roles you have. Next slide, please. Okay, so Microsoft is dedicated to the advancement of data spaces, offering support to customers and partners as they contribute to the European Union's data economy. We believe data spaces are going to be as important for industrial and business data as the GDPR is for personal data. So data spaces, they are part of the European strategy for data. And here on that slide, I've added a link to that European data strategy page. And the data spaces are a very important component of the Data Act. There are several articles mentioning the data spaces. And the Data Act has been approved back in January 2024, so like 4 months ago now, and it's going to be active by September 2025, meaning that between now and September 2025, vendors like Microsoft and customers, they have time to work on their data sharing strategy and see how they would like to be compliant with the Data Act. And from the Microsoft perspective, yes, the data spaces, they are starting from Europe, and that's nice. But we believe that's going to provide value to all customers globally, worldwide, and we see it, and we already have requests from customers all around the globe, in Japan, in APAC, even in the US. We start to see requests from customers. They have questions how to build a new data space or how to join an existing data space. Next slide. Okay, so this one is more about the Microsoft participation to the IDSA. So first of all, Microsoft has been an active member of several IDSA working groups since many years. I think that we joined like 4 years ago, something like that. And we have been a special role in the architecture rulebook and the IDS reference architecture model, the RAM. So I'm providing all the links to those different documents, and I think it was mentioned in the presentation before. So not only we contribute as many other participants to the different IDSA working groups, but also we contribute to some white papers. For instance, I remember that last month, a new white paper has been released about how data spaces can help with the AI Act, implementing the AI Act, and Microsoft was a co-author of this white paper. So that is just an example of a contribution from Microsoft, not the only one. We do that very frequently. And I would say that we have a very dense participation to the IDSA activities. I think we have daily interactions with IDSA, could be on the technical side, on the business side, on the legal side. We share a lot with IDSA in both directions. For instance, you know that Microsoft has a lot of data-related engineering groups. So we can share feedback from all those data engineering groups from Microsoft based on the trends they see from the market, the requests from the customers, what they are going to implement based on their roadmaps. So there is also a need to align the different roadmaps. So that's something we do. We get a lot of feedback from the engineering, and we are willing to share that with IDSA and the members. And conversely, we do exactly the same on the business side, because as I said before, we start to see requests from customers everywhere. They are interested in data spaces. They would like to start a data space or join an existing data space, and sometimes they ask us, what's the Microsoft view on joining a data space? And sometimes they tell us what they would like to do. And that's also a feedback that we can share with IDSA and the different members. So technical and business feedback is also something very important. As Gianfranco said before, we are just at the beginning of the data spaces. It's going to become something very important, and it's good to provide feedback to share feedback between the different members. Next slide, please. Oh, you are already on the standardization. Microsoft has been engaged in standardization activities for more than 30 years now, and we share with IDSA and the members our experience with those international standardization processes. Microsoft is playing a key role in the standardization of the data space protocol. We are actively contributing to its development, and we are supporting IDSA efforts toward international standardizations. Standardization is key for data spaces adoption because users, they are, should I say, they are reassured when there is a standard. It's easier to adopt a new technology. But also standardization is going to simplify the creation of a new data space or joining an existing one because you have some standards API you can rely on. So you are not depending on a specific vendor or a specific technology. You know that all of them, they are interoperable. So this notion of standardization for interoperability between or across data spaces is very important. Myself, I'm representing Microsoft at the ISO, at the Sensenelec. There is an ongoing activity at the Sensenelec. It's a workshop at this time where DAWEX, Fraunhofer, IDSA, and other data spaces organizations are deeply involved. So we have started this workshop. It's a first step. We are expecting the European Commission to ask the Sensenelec to go further in the standardization. And at the same time, we have started with IDSA and different members standardization effort at the ISO level, international level, not just European. So I'm providing the two links over there. There is a link to the ISO 20151 that is going to be the future standard for data spaces. And I'm also referring to the current workshop at the Senelec. That's ongoing activities. Once again, you know that standardization could be a very lengthy process. It will take some time before we have an official approved standard. But what is important, we have started this effort with all the relevant members, and we are going to have a standard for data spaces in somewhere in the coming years. I cannot share any estimated date, but in the coming years, we will have an official standard, and that's going to be a key milestone for the development and the adoption of data spaces. Next slide. Yes. So now, a few words about the open source and why it's important. First of all, at Microsoft, we believe that when it comes to trust and sovereignty for data sharing, open source makes total sense. And therefore, IDSA and Microsoft are both active contributors to the EDC, the Eclipse Data Space component, that is a free open source Java framework for data spaces. So this is an Eclipse Foundation project. It is a very active project, I would say, with many committers, contributors, and users. Microsoft is one contributor to that project. IDSA is another contributor. We have many contributors, including major European companies. So that's a very active project, and but that's just the first part of this open source strategy for data spaces. The second part, EDC is very nice, a lot of users, but it's just one project, an Eclipse project, and there are thousands of Eclipse projects. What is more important, we are now involved in, we have been recently involved in the creation of an Eclipse working group, the Eclipse, what we call the EDWG, the Eclipse Data Space Working Group. A working group is much more than a project within Eclipse. A working group is going to regroup several projects around the data spaces, meaning that we can have a different connector implementation, we can have some dedicated industrial working groups working on a specific industry, for instance. We can have very different implementations, maybe something more oriented towards governments and governments to citizen relationship. So a lot of different implementations will be available under this EDWG. And what is important is that the Eclipse Foundation is going to bring their knowledge and experience for unified governance across those data spaces projects. And also they are going to provide community management so that we can build and grow the data spaces community around the Eclipse Foundation. So that's something that we have started recently. I think the EDWG has been officially created back in December last year. So it's still very new. IDSA and Microsoft are founding members. I think we have 10 founding members right now. And something also very important, the Eclipse Foundation is a certified partner for the ISO and other certification standardization bodies, meaning that all the specification work we do within the Eclipse Foundation working group is going to be automatically transferred to the ISO, and then will automatically contribute to the standardization of the data spaces at the international level. So that's something very important, and that's why we have created this new working group. All of this is, from the Microsoft perspective, all of this is very well aligned with our new strategy for open source. You know that in the past, open source used to be seen as a competitor within Microsoft. You all remember Steve Ballmer talking about Linux being a cancer. Since Satya became the new Microsoft CEO back in 2014, we have a totally new strategy for open source, and Microsoft is using a lot of open source components. Microsoft is contributing to a lot of other open source projects, and sometimes Microsoft is the leader, the creator, the founder, and the leader of new open source projects. Just to give a few examples, you know that on Azure, we have much more Linux instances than Windows instances. You know that GitHub is now a Microsoft solution that we acquired, and we continue to operate exactly like in the past. And Visual Studio Code is another example of a very successful project within the development community. Many developers worldwide are using Visual Studio Code every day. So open source is no longer the enemy at Microsoft. At the opposite, open source is the way to go for most Microsoft projects. Not all of them, because sometimes open source makes no sense, but in most cases, it makes total sense. And what we are doing, contributing to the IDC and contributing to the data space working group within Eclipse is totally aligned with the Microsoft strategy. And by the way, I've added at the bottom of this slide, I've added a link to the Microsoft homepage for the open source initiative that we are running. And by the way, if people in the audience are interested in having more information about that, I have my email address at the end of the presentation, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions regarding to that. Next slide, please. Now, a few words. If you are interested in joining the data space journey, joining the community, I think there are several opportunities in front of us, depending on who you represent. If we are thinking at the company level, if you are a company, big company, small company, whatever, you can join IDSA as a member to collaborate to the different efforts. And you can also join the group I mentioned before, the Eclipse Data Space Working Group. That's a good way for you to be aware of the new developments. It's also a way to influence the future of data spaces and make sure that everything is taken into account. At the opposite, if you are a developer, I can strongly encourage you to join the open source EDC project on GitHub. Everybody is welcome. It's already a big project, so it takes some time to understand the architecture. But then once you do it, you can actively contribute, and that's also very important. You can contribute because you need something specific for your own data space. You can contribute because you think something is missing, because you want to improve the overall implementation. Everything is valid. Now, if you are more a kind of a software architect, maybe the best way for you to contribute to the data space development would be to join the IDSA Architecture Working Group. If you are more on a business developer or a legal expert, we can encourage you to join the IDSA Rulebook Working Group, for instance. And then for any other technical or legal activities, you can join the various working groups at the IDSA or the Eclipse Foundation Data Space Working Group. So meaning that whatever role you have, you will find a way to contribute if you are interested, and you will join a very active and vibrant community. Next slide, please. That's my final slide. I wanted to mention a few interesting resources So first of all, the reference to the free open source Eclipse project, the IDSA, also the link to the GitHub. There is a YouTube channel, and sometimes we are posting new videos over there to discover what data spaces are and how to join the data space community. And then I'm mentioning the new Eclipse data space working group and the IDSA knowledge base, where you will find a huge number of quality documentation to really understand in depth what data spaces are and how to use them, deploy them. And also the Data Space Support Center, that is a European funded organization to help customers onboarding on their data spaces journey. So once again, there is my email address over there. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need additional information. I also added my LinkedIn profile. And there is some, I think we will share the slides with the audience, so you will get the slides. I have some backup slides about how to join the data space community at the company level, so you have more details about what I just said before, and more important, you have links where to go if you are interested in joining. So that's at the company level, at the development level, at the architecture level, and strategic, legal, and business expertise.
Thank you, Eric. And we have only a couple of minutes for questions, but I want to take advantage of you being with us for curiosity of myself and for the audience. The very first question I would take advantage of satisfying a curiosity of mine before we open for the others. That is, how hard was it for you and your colleagues in Microsoft closer to us to go and ask Redmond for authorization or to become a member of IDSA? Because I guess that many of the people in the audience may have a similar kind of challenge. So how do I justify that I need to pay membership fees for these people, and perhaps they, I don't know, they have very strict control administratively? What was your pitch to Redmond at the time?
First of all, we have to tell them that data spaces are coming because it's part of the European strategy for data, and it's part of the Data Act. So at the given time, Microsoft will be interested for itself, making the products compliant with the new regulation. That's what we had to do for GDPR in the past, and we will have to do for the Data Act and the DSA, the DGA, the DMA, the AI Act, the Interop Act, and all of them. There is an impact on the Microsoft solution portfolio. We have to take that into account. We have to do that in advance. We have to anticipate a little bit, because if we just start thinking about being compliant with the Data Act in September 25, it's too late. So we need to start now in order to be ready at the right time. So that's the regulation pressure, and my team is part of the regulation team at Microsoft. So that's our job, to do that every day, to tell them we have upcoming legislation, we have to be prepared. So that's the first part. The second part is also because we see business requests coming from customers. They say, hey, Microsoft, we need to be, we are interested in data spaces. What should we do? What are the Microsoft products? Do you have consultants to help us? And blah, blah, blah. So they see it. They are not blind. So the combination of regulation plus customer demand is the right equation to support those requests. So not only we participate to IDSA, but we participate to Gaia-X, we participate to the Eclipse Foundation. So we need a budget, but it is mandatory. There's no way we avoid that. We will need to be compliant. Exactly what we did for GDPR. We do the same now for data spaces. It's normal. It's part of the business.
That's clear. So it's the business case is a bit of a combination of, let's say, a very utilitaristic way of being prepared. So by by being with an organization like ours, you learn what is needed before you are forced by a piece of legislation coming into in force, like in Europe next year, but also an element of creating a competitive advantage in a way, because you can influence how those standards develop, and you be maybe the first to understand them fully and master them by the time they actually come out and they are mainstream.
Yeah, and also, you know, when we're talking to engineering groups and we tell them there is a new regulation coming from Europe, their first reaction, we are going to change the roadmap. We have to take this into account. It's a very tedious task. You ask us and blah blah blah, and we tell them yes, but please try to see it as a new business opportunity at the same time. Yes, there is some regulation. We have to be compliant. There's no discussion. But there is also an opportunity because customers, they are also interested into that. So that's also what we do, trying to turn regulation as an opportunity, not just a constraint.
That's amazing. Thanks, Eric. I ask you to please stay with us, at least to check the chat if there are questions for you, because time-wise, I need to go on to my colleague Antoine. I will also process a few of the questions I see in chat for our friends online. Thanks again for being with us, Eric, and for all the work Microsoft, for you and your colleagues do with that, together with us. Thanks.
Welcome.
Antoine, please take it away. Let me put it on screen for you.
Sure thing. Good morning or good evening, everyone. So this is now the time for update and information about event on IDSA. This is the time of the call where we are talking about what is new when it comes to the life of the association, but also our assets and also a few information about which events are coming, where you might have chance to meet with us and or also online just to get information. Today, when it comes to update, we will talk about the training because this is a new topic for IDSA. We have been working on this one for the past months. And recently, we opened a new working group within IDSA, so the working group training, where we are currently developing a professional certification program about data space and based on our framework. So how it is organized. So underpinning this program is our main document, a new asset for IDSA, a document that we call the Data Space Body of Knowledge, so DSBOK, that is laying down the essential information to in turn create training. What it means is that we decided, so we worked on a few certification, a few profile, if you want, and agree on what are the learning items that one is supposed to master in order to be recognized as, for instance, a business consultant that you can see in the list. So that in turn, training a professional could create the necessary training material to train and prepare for acquiring this certification. So we are not developing the training material per se, but we are developing the syllabus. And this is why we need experts, experts like you, taking part of this endeavor so that we can agree, jointly on what is important for one to get those professional certification. So that's the work of the working group. We have like regular meetings. Currently, we are in a phase of the review of our data space body of knowledge, so the first version of it. And soon enough, we will be ready with this document and also the first training provider ready, which means that already in June, you would see first training offers available on the market and based on this data space body of knowledge. So from my perspective, so being involved in this training activity, this is also the chance for any one of you willing to take part in this endeavor and maybe also to leverage it from a commercial point of view, so meaning becoming a training provider, to meet with your peers and get some information, being able to exchange with your peers about your material, and getting prepared for the new version of this document for the new certification a bit in advance compared to everyone out there. Sorry. So that's the idea, and this is also a call on my side. As mentioned by my colleagues before, we need new members, and we'd like to have new participants. So to all the data space enthusiasts Eric was talking about before, you are more than welcome to join us, especially in this new group. Next slide, please. Yes, and now coming to the event. So in the recent weeks, IDSA has been participating in some major events in the industry. So that's the case with the Hannover Messe. This year, we were organizing a workshop at the Messe, where 10 members had the possibility to come on stage and share their insight about what they created data space related, and discuss that with 70 attendees from the industry. So sharing all this valuable information that actually you can get also here in this Monday morning call, talking about business and how data space are an interesting solution for the industry when it comes to data exchange. Next slide, please. And now, what is coming? So as you can see, there are a couple of events coming just in May. So this week already in Spain, in Bilbao, will be the ByData Forum. So ByData is an initiative from Spain, and backed by the Innovalia Group, a member of IDSA that is fully dedicated to data space, I mean ByData. And they will be having their forum, a large event where they expect more than 300 people to talk about the data economy and how data space could serve this this field. A few IDS Bomb members will be there to present their experience. I'm talking about Uto Bukart, Boris Soto, but also people from the IDS head office. Lars Nagel, Thorsten Ulsmann will be there, among others. Later on the same month, but in Paris this time, will be the ONAX European Data Summit, where we will be talking more specifically this time about mobility and tourism, especially in relation with the ONAX data space, and what they created there to support mobility and tourism with data space. I'll be having the honor to be there to talk on behalf of IDSA in a panel. On the same day, but also on the May 22 and 23, will be the IoT Solution World Congress. We will be active there with testbed presentation. There is a keynote of one of my colleagues as well. And also accelerating, because I see that time is flying, we will be also active in Belgium, in Tokyo, with a virtual keynote from our CEO, and also in Portugal with another keynote from another colleague. Next slide, please. And this is not all. I was talking about like an on-site event where you can meet with us directly, but there are also a few opportunities to discuss with us online. We have some regular events, as you can see here. I'm especially talking about the Q&A session and the tech talks. So the first one is really the occasion to start your journey with data space, and more specifically IDSA, to get a few insight about first what are data space, but also more specifically about what is new in IDSA. So getting the latest material and information when it comes to data space and IDSA, and tech talks, which are more deep dive on specific technical topic. The first one being, in this case, the rule book, and the other one talking about Prometheus X, meaning education data space in particular. I think that would be all on my side. Again, time is flying. Thank you on my side. Gianfranco, back to you.
Thank you. We are almost exactly on time. I guess the natural way to close the call is to remind you that you have 3 more opportunities to learn about us and our partners and how we work together. There will be 3 more calls. One on the importance of references as a common ground to design data spaces. We will talk there specifically about the reference architecture model that the IDSA has been developing for many years now, and we will have ByData as our guest. Then we will talk about the data space protocol specifically, possibly where most of our brains are invested at the moment in IDSA, also to get to standardization by the end of this year. And finally, of course, going from theory to practice, how we're actually getting to standards and the support of some of our colleagues abroad in showing it, how this is real, how the data space protocol is already, for example, implemented on the RAM itself. It's obvious that I need to remind you to become part of this community. And there are 2 ways by which you can do that, either by actually becoming members. That's our favorite one, because then we can have you together with us writing those protocols, writing those reference architecture. Or if it is easier for you, every organization is different, you can support us by donating to our organization. I believe that we made it quite clear, possibly even a bit boring to a point in repeating how much we need your support. We are non-profit. We need that to be sustainable, and we want to do many more years together. I believe that is all for today. You will find the slides and all the reference you need on screen and in the package we distribute later. Please be careful to save your time in your calendar for the next call. And I look forward to see you again next time. Thank you all, perfectly on time. And if you have questions, you know where to find us.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you very much.